Well, fetch that someone would actually steal your identity and then do terrible things in your name.
But you'd be amazed at how easy it is, especially if your license number is the same as your social security number. And when someone stole a Phoenix trucker's identity, he also stole his livelihood. The imposter's still on the loose, but the News 15 investigators found him. John Croman caught up with the phony trucker in Washington State.
I drive a truck.
Until 2 months ago, Phoenix truck driver Ed Frizzle thought he had a good life going.
I like this. You get to see the country.
But in late July, driving through Washington State, a routine inspection turned his life upside down.
They checked my logs, they run a check on my license, and they came back and they were quite nasty about the fact that I handed them an Arizona driver's license. Arizona said I was supposed to have a Texas license, and so did Texas.
Ed didn't know that in 1994, someone else used his name, date of birth, and social security number to get a license in Texas. You can only be licensed in one state at a time, so when the other guy got one in Texas, Arizona canceled the real Ed's license here.
I couldn't drive no more. Naturally, the company, as soon as they find out, they say, don't drive the truck no more.
Without a valid license, Ed was stuck at home, waiting for 2 states to clear up the confusion. He still had 5 kids to feed, but his company got tired of waiting and fired him.
It's the obvious, I can't work. It's the beginning of the month, all our bills were due.
Texas had this Ed Frizzle, Arizona had this one. But it took a month of bureaucratic haggling before both states admitted Arizona had the real one, Texas had the fake one.
And I never thought it would be this bad. I mean, I knew people do this, but I thought, okay, you go down there and say, hey, here I am, this is me, and that somebody would go after this guy.
The fake Ed Frizzle was here in Vancouver, Washington. Social Security records showed that someone by that name worked for 2 companies here, truck lines that the real Ed never heard of.
We move boats. We move big boats.
Steve and Dixie Fuller at Western Marine didn't suspect the man they hired was an imposter. They found out the hard way he wasn't a good driver.
When we arrived, we in fact found a tractor in the bay.
2 days after Christmas in Blaine, Washington, the imposter let his truck roll backwards into the bay. The yacht he was pulling could float, the truck could not. A $45,000 loss insurance refused to pay for.
The brakes had been adjusted backwards.
They didn't fire the driver right away. They gave him a chance to prove he knows how to adjust the air brakes.
He says, have you seen enough when he got through with his adjustment? And I said, yeah, you've proved to me you know nothing about air brakes and how to adjust them. And he got mad and quit.
No brakes now. The truck was out of the water by the time local TV showed up, but the camera caught a glimpse of the driver. On the fire department report, he listed himself as Ed Frizzle of Vancouver. Who could he really be?
His wife kind of called him Chris a couple of times, so that's probably his real name.
The mystery man then got a job here at Art Bliss Trucking in Vancouver, again using Ed Frizzle's name and social security number. Here at Art Bliss Trucking, the fake Ed Frizzle got in trouble because he got speeding tickets he didn't tell them about. And when he finally brought in his social security card, it had obviously been forged. The name is off-centered and crooked, and if you look closely enough, there's a trace of another name beneath it. The fake Ed's former co-workers told us he drives a little yellow Ford pickup and lives here at the Royal Ridge Condominiums in Vancouver. We're looking for Ed Frizzle. Are you Ed?
That ain't me.
Are you Chris?
That ain't me.
You went by the name Ed Frizzle in your last 2 jobs. His hair's a little longer now, but there's no doubt this is the same guy who called himself Ed Frizzle the day of the wreck. Besides, we found him at the same place the state of Texas sent letters to him.
If you don't leave us alone, we're going to call the cops.
Well, I wish you would call the cops, because I think they'd be interested in who you are.
Really?
I don't think you're really Ed Frizzle. I don't think you're the real Ed Frizzle.
Well, that's too bad. Go away.
Well, why are you pretending to be somebody else? Another man came out and threatened to shoot our camera. Do you know why we're here?
No.
Your friend used this social security number and this name that belonged to a guy in Arizona.
Look, put the camera down or I'll walk back 44 and put the bullet in it.
Then he claimed he was the only guy there. Who's the other guy that came out?
I didn't know there was anybody else here.
There was another guy in there. He just not came out. Suddenly, the guy who supposedly wasn't there was in his truck, backing away so fast we couldn't catch him. The real Ed's on the road again, too, making only half as much money as he did before the ordeal began.
It's taking its toll on my whole family.
He lost 6 weeks' wages, his credit record is in jeopardy, and the worst thing is, nobody's making the imposter pay.
And nobody wants to go after him. I can't find any law enforcement that wants to do anything about it. It's still a problem to me. The guy's still living up there in my name. I'd prefer not to see him. I'd just like to see him locked up in a deep, dark hole somewhere.
Now, the real Ed has never seen the fake Ed before in his life, so how'd this happen? Well, the real Ed's Social Security number is also his driver's license number. That goes on all the gas receipts at all the truck stops all over the country. Now, the people at the Motor Vehicle Division say that they recommend against using your Social Security number as your driver's license, especially if you drive a lot like the real Ed did.
Oh, boy. So what if you already did it? What if your license and your Social Security are the same?
Well, you can undo that. You can just go down to the Motor Vehicles Department and say, I want a new license number. You know, there's a fee there, but you can do it. Same thing with your Social Security card, too. You can also get a new Social Security number if you need one.
John, why is the fake Ed still free? That's ridiculous.
Well, that's a good question, Mark. Basically, it's a matter of jurisdiction. Texas says it's only a misdemeanor to get a license under a false name, and Texas just hasn't made it a priority yet to go after a suspect who lives in Washington.
All right. Thank you, John.
Sure.
And if you